What do you get when you combine simplified practice marketing, proven ROI strategy, and Van skate shoes? You get Mark Thackeray, of course. So lace up, grab your green smoothie, and get ready, because this is Dental Marketing Secrets. And this is Mark.
Happy New Year to you all. Woo! So excited for 2021. I don't know about you, but I actually enjoyed 2020 for a lot of different reasons. It was hectic. It was unknown. There was confusion. There was tons of drama. There were a lot of curveballs thrown our direction, and both as an industry and as a business, my own personal business, very, very interesting. But as I look back, I'm super grateful for all the lessons that I learned and that we learned as a family. We gained so much clarity about what's most important to us. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. And I hope you can say the same thing, that you can look back and find the silver lining of everything that you've gone through over the past 12 months, all the wild ups and downs, and apply that to 2021 to make it an incredible year. Really, to add more clarity in your life, to focus on those things that truly are most important, and to build your practice at the same time. Because, as you know, that's what this show is all about, dedicated to bringing you tactics and techniques that will help you grow your practice predictably, consistently, time and time again. And with that, I'm super excited about our guest. So I'm breaking this down into 2 episodes because there's so much content. I don't want to overwhelm everything and overwhelm you all with the depth of what we talk about. And I'm no expert at this by any means. I brought in my friend who is Andrea Kartch. She is a master at facilitating practice changes, and so our concept for today, our topic for today is marketing campaigns and shifting practice culture. Okay, because your ability to upgrade your culture really depends on your ability to, let me rephrase that. In order to upgrade your practice culture, you need to understand how to work through that transition. There's a process to making those changes. There's conflict. There's all these things that come up naturally. And Andrea breaks it down to a process that you can follow. And that's what I love about our conversation. I took so many notes about this. And what's so neat is that it's incredibly applicable to all aspects of your life. It's not just dental, it's not just managing a team, but I drew all these parallels from personal experiences with my girls, with my 4 daughters and my wife, it's everyday living, which is so, so cool. But let me tell you a little bit about Andrea, and then we'll jump right into the interview. But Andrea is a creative leader known for high caliber consultations and coaching discussions involving professional skills development, team performance enhancement, and life skills. She brings expertise in championing change, business and operational acumen, facilitation, and building and leading teams, all with strong relationship and process focus. This is accomplished through Andrea's ability to effectively convey concepts in an easy, understandable manner and assimilate ideals and concepts into daily practices, tactical initiatives, and systemic processes. She is a master at breaking things down so it's easy to understand and gives you a process to follow to implement it. I love that. Andrea's passion is all around self-awareness, personal brand, and partnering with others. She is skilled in facilitation and public speaking, leading a variety of learning and client experiences. And Andrea's certifications as a coach or consultant include change management and cultural transformation, emotional intelligence, DISC, DDI master facilitation, and classroom management. Her delight is supporting people and shifting the trajectory of their lives and providing them with tools and strategies that aid in that transformation. So without further ado, let's jump into this interview with Andrea Kartch. All right, Andrea, welcome to the show. So excited to have you. How are you?
I'm good today. Thanks for asking, and Happy New Year.
Oh, Happy New Year indeed. I'm so excited for this new year. And it's funny because nothing has really changed except for that, you change the 0 to a 1. But for some reason, there's that perception in my head that a lot of things have changed, and yes. I don't know what it is, but it's very powerful. So
Agreed.
Well, this is a real treat because for those of you listening, Andrea and I have been working together for off and on for the last couple of years, in different capacities. We worked together at Mortensen Dental Partners. And I've always, and I've told her this on a number of occasions, but I've always admired Andrea's ability to bring people together and help them see each other's points of view, to help them get on the same page and really align a team, And so when I thought of this, because this has happened with a lot of my clients and just people in the industry, right? When they're looking to implement a new marketing campaign, or they're looking to make a change in their culture, and it just doesn't go as planned. I thought, well, we need to bring in the experts here. I can't speak to that per se, but I know someone who can. And so that's why when I reached out to Andrea, and she was so kind to come on here and share her expertise. So I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you so much. You're very sweet. And I enjoyed working with you as well. I remember that one multi-day session that we had in your world. I will always remember how helpful you were to the people at your table during the breakout activities, and just how much you demonstrated your leadership skills, let alone being the marketing guru.
Oh, well, thank
forever
you.
In my brain, Mark, forever.
For better or worse. No, that's awesome. Give everyone a little bit of context. We just read your bio, but tell everyone, a little bit about yourself, what you've been up to the last couple of years, what you do.
I made a transition from hardcore operations in business and functional training, bridging learning and development with the business operations, probably about 10 to 12 years ago, more formally. And my career has now led me down the path of being a coach and consultant for leadership and professional skills development. My tagline for my own website is, I provide tools and strategies that can transform people's lives.
I love that. I love that. And I actually love the word tools because, when you have the right tool, it makes things so much easier. It's funny. My wife and I were just talking about 2020 and all the things that we did in 2020 with our family, because we were kind of holed up, we're working from home and all that.
Yes.
But we were taking a walk outside, and we built a tree house that, started out like the normal kind of small tree house. And then we embellished a little bit and added a second level. And it was just so fun. And then we've since added all these things. But in the process, I realized that I didn't have the right tools for half of these jobs. And so trying to makeshift my way through things. And once I got that tool, oh my goodness, it made everything so much easier.
Yes. And it's also easier to implement and to get the job done.
Yes.
Totally.
Easier, faster. There's so many neat benefits there. So, okay, well, let's dive into this topic. And I teased it out a little bit, but it's really about how do we shift our practice culture? How do we upgrade that culture? And maybe and in my world, it's a lot of we have this idea for a new marketing campaign. The providers feel good about it, but how do we get that to trickle all the way down to the entire team so that we're all rowing in the same direction? Okay, so what, because I run up against this quite a bit, where I see, I'll talk to, I'll usually work with a dentist or doctor right up front, and we'll kind of strategize and formulate a plan. But then talking with an office manager, or talking with an assistant or other team members, they're not quite maybe all there in the loop.
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't have that entire vision. And as a result, they're left feeling a little, I don't know. I think we're doing this. I'm not really sure, but, they're just not fully on board. And so if I'm looking to upgrade my practice culture, what do I need to do in order to make sure that my team is on board with me and doesn't, jump ship after a week or two?
That's a really great question. And I think a lot of dental teams are experiencing that, have, and probably will in the future.
Yes.
I like looking at it at a high macro level view. There's 3 takeaways I think that you and I are planning to talk about today. First is, how do you enroll your practice team and all of your staff in the changes that are imagined and created? And when you offer these ideas to people, Mark, and you're working with the dentist, learning how to engage and enroll the team with all of these ideas is going to be really important. Another thing is that any change, especially if it's culture-driven marketing, really has to align with the culture of the practice already, so that you're adding and editing, and you also have to align all of the new expectations. And then last but not least, we're going to be talking a lot today about how do you honor your people. People support what they create. And a lot of people don't really care for the flavor of the month when efforts don't really play out or they take longer than what we anticipated. So those are the things that we're going to be talking about today so that people do get on board and want to contribute to the change.
Yes, I love that. People support what they create. That is something that has stuck with me ever since, I think it was the first time I met you and you shared that. And it was just that major light bulb moment, that I saw, man, this will have dramatic effects on, from a practice level, from the team I was working with now to, I look at it all across the board. I look at it from my kids, we're trying to set goals. We're trying to get them on, to really develop their potential and see that vision. But that's what's so neat about this topic is that it's universally applicable in your life.
Exactly. So while we're talking about dental practices, I consider this life skills. Whatever we talk about today can be applied with friends, family, outside of the dental industry. It's things to know that create change. And I know that you and I both will be directing it today toward the dental industry because we have to attract patients and we have to keep our schedules full. And 2020 has been really rough for the dental industry.
Yeah, it has been. And a lot of practices are still recovering in some aspects. They've made a rebound in a number of different areas. Hygiene is one of those areas that's still not where it used to be or not where it needs to be. And so, they're forced to look at things a little bit differently. And I think this comes in really handily because it's something that you're going to use indefinitely, because as we know, in a dental practice, one of the challenges is retaining your team, and then we didn't talk about this, but this is just something that is out there. It's always a challenge to retain your team. There's a lot of turnover. A lot of it's because the age demographic and things like that. But, if you can get this down, if you can really become a master at building a culture that people, it's magnetic, they're attracted to it, then people are going to want to stay with you for a long time.
Agreed. And so for me, I think that there's actually 5 key elements, which I consider to be the absolute basic fundamentals that aren't only going to address the marketing-minded culture, but it's also going to affect brand, professionalism, the goals of the team, and overall expectations. And so here are the 5 things, Mark. Number 1, our communications. When, what, and how to be in communication about the change. Second of all, we really have to play to our team's strengths, their attributes, their personalities, their styles, their preferences. They are who they are. And so how do we really hook them to get them involved? Third of all, we really have to anticipate and expect that there's going to be conflict. Now, it could be a huge obstacle and hurdle like Mount Everest, or it could be just a little, let's like dance through this thing together. But ultimately, it's a matter of when it happens and ultimately how we're going to manage it. Number 4, we have to be able to show emotional and social intelligence. It's just required in today's world.
Right.
And lastly, I think that a basic fundamental is how the leaders actually lead. And there's a concept called shadow of the leader. It was one of the very first certifications I had from a company called Sendelini. And the concept of shadow of the leader is how the leader behaves and acts is what the people in that team and organization will do. And it's the classic do as I say, not as I do. So leadership and how the dentists and the providers actually lead their teams is going to be one of the most important things because they're role modeling the expectations.
That is neat. I love that. I love that idea. And just that illustration, really that picture that it conjures up of shadow of the leader and how it's always kind of there. That's what I thought of when you said that, is that presence or that influence is always there, and that's super important.
Awesome.
So one thing that I've, kind of go, I see this quite a bit is where, when we're rolling out a new marketing campaign, and this applies to, it goes well beyond marketing, but let's stick with the marketing example. So if we're coming up on a new campaign, we're doing something a little bit different than what we've done before as a practice. And the team, well, and I guess I'll switch gears a little bit, but maybe the team is a little worn out of, hey, we're going to try this campaign for this month. And then, doctor comes back a couple of weeks later and be like, oh, this is the plan. We've got it. This is our golden ticket. And here's this next one. And so, the team is like, well, what's going on? What are we really doing? Is this going to stick? So how do I, if I'm the dentist, how do I communicate, my new plan, my new idea in such a way that my team knows that this is really, really important to me. And this is going to become an integral part of who we are as a practice culture.
That's a really loaded question. Wow, you're on a roll today, Mark. All right, let's think about that. How about a two-prong approach? First is your method of communications. Let's just land on that first, okay? So what is your method of communication, and what do you aim to achieve through the approach that you use? So for instance, the ways of communication that I'm well aware of in dental practices is the morning huddles,
right?
Emails, memos, handwritten notes on employee boards and break rooms. There's one-on-ones, obviously. We do have team meetings. Sometimes there's lunch and learn. Sometimes there's online learning. And then, of course, there's always the practice manager and potentially other people. And so when you think about all of the different ways that a practice can communicate, there may be other things that unique practices do as well. Whatever your methodology is, use them, okay? Because the more ways that we as leaders communicate with our folks, we can change it up. We can make it fresh.
Right.
We can come in with a morning huddle and do something, and that's going to have a completely different tone than a follow-up email or memo. And it's important for people to understand 4 key things. Ready to roll?
Yes.
Let's do the 4 more.
Yes.
First of all, when we communicate, we have to help people understand why we're making that marketing change and how it's going to happen. Now, here's the thing. In how it's going to happen, that's one of the ways that we can involve our people. And we're going to be talking about that even more. What's in it for the team? A lot of times when we're making changes, we talk about our patient base, our client base, our customer base, right? But at the end of the day, it's our folks who are going to be carrying everything out. Mm-hmm. And so we really have to come up with what's in it for the team. And I also have SWWC. So what? Who cares? You ever get that eye roll from team members, right?
Oh, yeah.
We have to answer those questions. We have to help our team understand what the benefit is for them and the patients. And we really have to connect the dots. And this is why we have to. When we prioritize our people, that's going to be job one because they're the ones carrying out the culture shift.
Right.
They're the ones, right, Mark, who are in constant contact with our patients, probably more so and more frequently than some of our providers, actually. So when a provider approaches you, let's say, and wants to make a culture shift, they're going to be involved in meetings and conversations and investing and all of those things. The leaders that you're working with have probably been involved in this concept for quite a while, weeks, months, sometimes years, right?
Mm-hmm.
The team is only hearing about it now, formally, for probably the first time. So they're hearing a news flash.
Yes.
When the leaders are, what do you mean? This has been going on for a while now.
Right.
So the leaders are so down the line of acceptance and understanding, and they've had probably hours of discussions. And now we're throwing that at people and expecting them to be so excited and as excited as we are, because we've known about it. And so at the end of the day, we have to make sure that our team members can become ambassadors. And that's the purpose of the communication, so that they understand how and why patient care is on the line.
Yes. Well, and I love those. There's so many there that we could dive into further. But I wanted to touch on two of those. Well, we'll see how much time. But I love just valuing your team, really honoring your team. You know, one of the things I talk about a lot on the podcast is making your patients the hero of the story. And there's really a corollary to that, and that's making your team the hero of the story as well. You know, and that's, you know, we've seen both sides of the coin, right? And when it comes to this, where you've been in the waiting area, or you've been in the chair, hopefully not in the chair, but it happens in the chair too, where you have a provider that's just is annoyed and condescending towards a team member. And as a patient, you're just floored. You know, I mean, nothing leaves a worse taste in your mouth than when they are treating each other with disrespect. But conversely, you can see the power of it when it happens in the right way. You know, when you have a provider that is really sharing the praise and all, really the glory, the limelight with their team, and saying, well, I have an exceptional team, and they're specific, and they give reasons why, and they're not just, you know, a blanket statement. But
yes.
It's amazing what that looks like, you know. And as I was thinking about this when you were talking, I thought, well, man, each team member is really like one of those switch points on a railroad track, you know, where they kind of go either direction, right? And every interaction you have with that team member can either send the patient down this, you know, maybe less than stellar experience, or they can keep them on a fantastic patient experience, you know. But it starts with you as the leader really honoring your team.
First of all, that's a fantastic analogy. I'm going to steal that from you.
By all means.
And the other, you know, what you're bringing up, the tone of your voice, the body language, the facial expressions, especially when we are behind masks, right?
Yeah, right.
Now, the dental team always wears masks, you know, and they've been wearing protective gear for a long, long time. But especially in today's world, vocalizing and verbalizing in your communication is actually going to mean even more in today's world, Mark. And that's something that I would want to let people know about when they think about communications. If people rely on their history with you instead of where you are now and looking forward, and they can't see your entire face to gauge, that's going to be something to really think about when it comes to communication.
Interesting. I'm going to write that down.
And, you know, something else, when it comes to the huddles and things like that, one of the things that we worked on when you and I worked together, and what I've seen with medical doctors and pharmacists as well in my career, is that many times the doctors themselves do not attend the morning huddles. And I'm just going to put a pitch in right now that regardless of whatever the circumstance is, the leaders who attend those operational morning meetings are the leaders that are more trusted, they're better respected, and people know that they are reliable. Many, many times the providers themselves will be either late to those meetings or a no-show, and that sends some type of a message. I don't know what message, but it sends a message.
Yes.
And so if people know what to expect in regard to those things, it will be very, very helpful. But leaders cannot lead change if they are not physically present.
That's a fantastic example, because that happens far too often, you know, and it does. It's just it shows it sends a negative signal that, hey, this isn't important enough for me to be here, you know, with my team when we're discussing what's happening that day, or even, if it's a bigger meeting, then that's probably even more, has more severe repercussions.
But you know what, too, when we're talking about communication, Mark, it's also around the fact that if the provider can't be there, because think about it, the providers are responsible for everything. And especially if they're a member of a DSO, they're going to have other commitments, responsibilities, meetings, things like that their team is not going to be involved in at all.
Yeah.
So the team also has to know what to expect in these types of things that you and I are talking about right now. All the leader needs to do is let people know. I can attend the morning huddles this days during the week, not during this. I will follow up with you guys. It's proactively letting people know what to expect so that they can't make something up in their head.
No, that's such a great point. That is such a great point. We just need to know what to expect.
Exactly.
So in that same light, as we're talking about, communication, what are some of the negative consequences of a lack of proper communication? What else do you see, when we're not effectively communicating our vision, our goals, or what we're trying to accomplish?
What I've seen over the course of many decades is the possibility of increased attrition. And for anyone who has ever done people leadership or hiring, attrition is our Achilles heel. We've got to hold on to our folks. I've also seen real significant lack of alignment, which creates up to and including sabotage when it comes to implementing new and different changes, especially marketing changes. Office gossip and the division of the teams and the cliques and all of those types of things are also a part of human nature. Ultimately, my concern about it in the dental side of the world, Mark, is that unhappy staff is going to negatively impact our patients.
Yes.
And as you know, with NPS and surveys and all of these different things, if someone feels as if they have not been served to the level that they thought, it's going to be out on the internet somewhere, and it's almost impossible to get it taken down.
Yeah.
And so to me, the negative part is that we will not be able to withhold and withstand our brand, that we are going in some way to be chipped away at. And every time an employee leaves and we have to retrain a new one and our patients see that change, the patients may feel that the marketing change was actually a detriment if they don't see the same team 6 months later when they come for their hygiene appointment.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true.
Teams, if they are revolving doors, do not make patients comfortable.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Well, one of the things you talked about earlier too, Andrea, was getting your, playing to the strengths of your team. So, and that's as I think about these things, and having been a part of, what we talked about, our time with Mortensen, and having been in that environment and then working with clients privately, I've seen this in both cases. But a lot of times when we roll out a new initiative, we want everyone to we fill all the roles almost, we don't necessarily give as much thought to who might be the best fit for this, or what would they be comfortable with. We kind of assign people different tasks and responsibilities. Some do this better than others, of course. But one of the challenges is that people end up taking on roles and responsibilities that aren't really in their wheelhouse. Yeah. So talk to us, a little bit more about playing to strengths.
Awesome. So there's 3 points that I wanted to bring up today. And this is actually conceptual without any type of an assessment. Now, there's going to be a lot of assessments out there for people. And while I use less than a handful in my practice, in my consultating business, at the end of the day, this is simply leaders learning how to lead and being aware. And we'll talk about that even more. But strengths involves 3 different key points. Number 1, we have to allow our team to become involved in the actual changes. We have to. And we have to do that by asking them and inviting them to become involved as early as possible. Everyone has natural skills, Mark. So when you play to your strengths, you're doing what you really love and you're doing what you're really good at. And that synergy together is what creates the strength.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people do what they're really good at and they hate it. And then we have what's called midlife crises, right?
Yes.
Or people are doing something that they love and they're horrible at, and they wonder why they can't hold down a position for longer periods of time. We have to learn to invite people to be involved. For instance, if you know that someone is very, very quiet and they're just a little introverted and they're not really comfortable explaining things to patients, the last person you want to have greet someone is that individual.
Right.
Now, they might be great helping with the accounts receivable and statements and care credit and things like that, but that's not playing to someone's natural strengths. Keeping in mind, people support what they create. If I invite you to come to my sandbox and play in the sandbox, you're going to feel a lot better than just jumping in, right?
Right.
There you go. Item number 2, we all have to realize that when we play to people's strengths, we have to understand that change takes time and we have to allow people to refocus. Meaning, how are we going to develop the strengths that people have? So if you have someone who is a take charge kind of team member, and they are all over that practice, looking at things, wiping things down, checking the schedule, making sure everything is taken care of, the reports have been generated, blah, 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 blah. Well, you might want that person to step back a little bit and help you create maybe some new reporting that's going to come out of that marketing change. If that person is really good at what I just explained, give them a chance to see what's coming and give them time to figure out how to make it work. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, I love
Awesome.
that.
And then the last one is people's strengths are going to evolve and change over time. When they see that really quiet person being given responsibilities that suit them and their preferences and style, and they see that that other person is really good with the reports and everything I just described, they're going to want to step up and say, you know what, I haven't really been able to do this well before, but I'd sure like to learn. And in that moment, we have to be really compassionate and we have to be accepting of their offer, because it's showing us, Mark, that they actually want to give it a shot. They're trying to jump into the game. They're not quite sure how they're going to fit in, but they want to do it anyway.
That's a love. I'm going to jump in here, but I love that point because, and this, we'll get into this down the road, but that's really what emotional intelligence is, right? Is being able to understand that, hey, if there's this person who's, maybe a little nervous about assuming a new responsibility, but is willing to give it a shot, or perhaps even if they're maybe speaking out against a new initiative, like both of those are indicators that there's some good things underneath that surface. Those, in the one case, I see this all the time, and I tell this to my clients all the time. Hey, when somebody leaves a bad review, that's a tremendous opportunity for you to learn, what's going on, how to innovate further, but also win them back as a patient by speaking out to them. They were passionate enough about their experience to go out of their way to write something online.
Yes.
That shows that there's something there, that you can address. And a lot of times they'll come back, and when they come back, they're even more loyal to your practice than ever before. It's really neat.
And, even as a coach, we experience that as well, that people are not happy, but yet how do you say to someone who's investing time in you that they're not happy? And
Right.
So learning how to ask the questions when the patient is still there, being observant of what their overall experience has been that day.
Yeah.
Really, really important. And look, I am not a clinician in any shape, form, or fashion. Everyone knows that about me, but I'm a great patient and I will always give the patient perspective. When you give me a cursory, oh, is everything okay today? And I'm standing in a waiting room where everyone can hear me, and you've got 3 or 4 or 5 team members behind the desk, and someone else is waiting behind me to also check out, how much truth could I tell you, especially if it was negative, and I want to be respectful of you.
Right.
And so being aware of someone's experience as it's happening is really, really important. We always want our teams to be the champions and be a stakeholder for the outcome. But people won't be able to be a great stakeholder, Mark, if they're not doing what comes most naturally to them initially.
Right.
And once they kind of get their mojo and get a role going with what they do naturally well, then we're going to be able to expand their boundaries through further development or some upskilling to really get them to buy in and understand that this marketing culture shift and change is going to be the bomb.com.
Well, and that's so true. And I love that, the way you described that, Andrea, because when you invite your team to come and effectively create this new initiative, marketing campaign, cultural upgrade, whatever the case may be, they're naturally going to play to their strengths, because they're not, they're going to say, well, I can do that. Yeah, I'm good at that. They're more likely to volunteer for those type of roles and responsibilities than if they were just presented with a new marketing initiative and said, you are going to be, you're going to contact all these patients that filled out this form online. And so I think, and actually, thinking about that, I've seen that happen. We had this practice that was working with a Make-A-Wish campaign. And the goal was to raise money for the charity, the charity here in Utah and the chapter. And we had all these different ideas, and it was so neat to allow those team members to really take the reins of some of these ideas. And there was two in particular, Kaylee and Taylin. They had a tremendous idea to do a fun run, like a 5K fun run. You come and all the money goes to Make-A-Wish. And so they just, and that's something I never probably would have ever thought of or had the guts to go through with it all the way. But just, they took that idea and they ran with it and they put it all on together. They got other community sponsors involved. They got all this extra exposure and things like that. And it just, it was just so neat to see when they were given that opportunity, what they made of it. And it was actually turned out so much better than it would have if I did it. And I think that's the principle here.
That is so wonderful to hear. That's exactly the point. When people really have the buy-in, it matters. I know that the Mortensen region and maybe a few others, when we worked together, were also involved in Smiles for Life.
Yes.
Where you would get the free kit, and then if you got that for yourself at a hefty discounted price, a complimentary kit went to a child to give them a wonderful smile. The practices that we had that were involved in that went out of their ever-loving minds in the best way possible to get the most teeth whitening kits done for these kids. And as a former patient of Mortensen Dental as well, when I flew into Louisville and around the country, doing the work that I did, it was wonderful to see how many times I personally was hit up to get my teeth whitened and to help the kids. So to your very point, when people are engaged, they're going to support what they create.
Yes. Oh, that should be a big, huge banner in the break room, or maybe not in the break room, but just in the dentist private office, just because it's so important. That is like one of the overarching principles that we're talking about.
Agreed.
So, okay. So you touched on this a little bit, but as we're getting going, we're getting people involved, and now we're going to naturally, things aren't going to go, they're not just going to take off and it's smooth sailing into the sunset, right? I mean, there's going to be challenges that come up. So what happens and what do we do when we are faced with that conflict that you mentioned too before?
Well, let's just start right now by saying conflict is going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So everybody just kind of, whoever's listening to this, just hold on. And I'm afraid that if people are risk averse or don't like confrontation in any way, they might be cringing right now. But you and I are really going to get a little more deeply into the concept of conflict and how to turn it around and make it healthy communication. But conflict is really, really tough because it actually is a form of communication. And so a lot of people will internalize it and make it something that's negative. going to ask any of the listeners right now, conflict is positive. In my world, and for me personally, Mark, I would much rather know exactly where someone stands, as long as they don't project it at me.
Yeah.
As long as it's still about the situation, I really want to know about that. So let's break it down. There's a couple of elements that make communication healthy. Number one, it's situationally based, meaning I'm going to behave differently at a Broadway show when I'm dressed up on a Saturday night than I am when I go to a department store or a home repair store to make a drive-up delivery and have someone pop it in my trunk.
Right.
Right? Okay. Which means communication, when it's healthy, is flexible and dynamic, and it's based on our thoughts and our feelings and our beliefs. And frankly, it's an expression of our personality.
Right.
Now, if that's the apex and we're traveling down the mountain and conflict starts, what's happening there is honestly, simply people have different beliefs and they think differently, and they're going to hold on to their opinions, which we call a position. And they're going to hold on to that opinion so tightly that they are not going to negotiate and they're not going to find a middle ground. That's conflict. And so another way said, it results from people having different perspectives and perceptions, and they become literally unwilling to meet someone closer in the middle. And so, as we've been talking about, that's why communication is so important. People may not like what they're hearing, but at least they're hearing it consistently from the same people, same message in different ways. They still may not like it, but it's a constant repeat for consistency. We want to be consistent versus insistent. Does that make sense so far?
Yes. Yes. And I've just been taking some notes, and because it jogged, well, it conjured up a few recent memories and experiences from personal life. So one, just that whole idea that conflict is really is natural and it's good, because that shows that you're really making progress towards the desired outcome. I think about, okay, this morning was a prime example. It's the new year, trying to get up early and go to the gym or go work out or study or do something, rather than just lay in my bed, and wake up when the kids get up. But so it's 5:30, and I would kind of wake up. My wife's already getting up because she coaches at the gym. She's a personal trainer, and I'm sitting there like, oh, I'm going to read in bed. And right before she walks out, bless her soul, she says, hey, there's a class starting at 6:00. Just where there's a gym right up here that she coaches out too. And she said, why don't you come? And it was just enough for me to get out, but there was that moment of conflict. Like, I'm so comfortable. I am, I'm not feeling it, whatever the case may be. And I felt so much better for doing that. And another example too was so we had the kids. We've got 4 girls, and their oldest one is 12, 10, almost 8, and 4. And we've been trying to add more responsibility to their plate because they're ready for it. And it's really just us, working through that process. But I remember my wife had the idea, okay, this one was my idea. So I will take credit for most of the good ideas are from my wife, and she deserves all the credit, but this one I do get something from. But so I had this idea, okay, Sundays, they're going to do all the dishes. Sunday's the one day they'll do all the dishes, at least for dinner. And so I remember when we first rolled that out, that was not a pleasant scene. There's, you remember their ages. So they're 4 to 12, and the 4-year-old doesn't really know what's going on. And the 12-year-old is up in arms and just won't stand for it. And, and there's that conflict for the first couple of Sundays that happened, but now it's become normalized, and that's just how it is, but it's understanding and recognizing, hey, that conflict is part of the process, and it's a good sign.
Those are excellent examples. And you're actually bringing up another key point. Sometimes, Mark, conflict is real. And other times we simply feel conflicted. you were feeling conflicted. You knew there was going to be something coming up with your girls.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm sorry to hear that. I have two sisters, and growing up, Daddy used to say, I just wanted a little bit of time for myself, you know? But at the end of the day, feeling conflicted, even if no one else knows about it, and being in conflict with someone else, it's the same biochemical reactions in our bodies. And you really pointed that out really, really well.
Well, and I'm glad you underlined that or underscored that, because, a lot of times we, and this happens in marketing a lot, where, we think really our outside perception does not match our internal reality. And so it's so important to get those two on the same page. They've got to align, because, from a marketing standpoint, if a patient is experiencing this, or their perception of the practice or the provider, the doctor, the team, whatever, is super low or super high, that is their reality. You have to kind of come to grips with that. So I think I love what you said, that feeling conflicted and being in direct conflict with someone is really the same. It's one of the same.
Exactly. It really is. What I wanted to do for your audience today is also share something that we call team formation. And I wanted to give you some information about that, hopefully so that the teams can understand how natural it is as you go through a change of any kind, and what you can actually expect. Have you ever heard of the stages called forming, norming, storming, and performing?
I hadn't before we met. No, I hadn't.
Are you okay if I give just a couple of highlights for those? I mean, obviously this could be hours long with detail,
Sure.
But I want to help people understand, so just so far, how the communication and playing to people's strengths are really going to help them steer away from conflict. And even when they're in it, some tips that they might want to use. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. So the first stage is what we call forming. And every time we add someone to a team, every time someone leaves a team for whatever the reasons, that is effectively a change in the team dynamics. And every time that happens, think of it as the infancy stage. And what people are really thinking about is, I want to be polite. It's kind of new. We're coming together. I'm a little anxious, and I'm not quite sure where and how I fit in.
Yeah.
So any team that comes together is feeling that. Now, From a leadership perspective, they're relying on us. They are dependent on us. They need to learn systems, policies, where things are, everybody's style and personality. And bottom line, people are concerned, well, what's going to happen to me? And how am I going to be included? And then there's ways to work ourselves out of that. One of the ways is to simply clarify the roles and always let people know the expectations. But there's a whole bunch of backstory and context to that. Now, once people start coming together from the infancy stage, we are going to start storming. Now, it could be a monsoon, could be one of those big storms that cross the plains, right? Or it could be a little cloud over the house and it trickles away and it goes away after a little while. There's going to be a range. When we storm, we are really just thinking about, I think my emotions need to be a little more evident here. And people will typically express their differences more. And it will either be very blatant or very open, And what people are dealing with is resistance to task demands, because now they're thinking, well, now I don't have to be told where I fit in. I know where I want to fit in, because now I'm starting to get clear. No, I don't want to do that. I want her to do that. No, I don't want to do that. I want him to do that. And he's thinking, I don't want to do that. That's their job. And so all of a sudden you start seeing what I call territorial tendencies and behaviors. And what happens there is that what the people need now is a leader who understands how to manage the resistance. So we start with an interdependency on the leader and on others in the team. And now we're just frankly being resistant. And so conflict is actually an integral part of how a team forms itself. And one of the best ways to move through the storming phase is to provide guidance and make decisions to keep the team moving. You just have to keep the team moving, because otherwise they're going to spiral and go down that rabbit hole, and it's going to become even more difficult.
So when you say keep the team moving, what do you mean by that?
They have to stay on point. They have to stay on schedule. We have to make sure that people are still coming in and leaving on time, that they're taking their breaks, that they're doing what they know they need to do. I don't really care who does the cleaning up. The cleaning up has to happen. I don't care who has to clean the lunchroom. The lunchroom has to be cleared. The garbage has to be taken out. The bathrooms have to be wiped down. And so in a storming phase, especially, we will probably see people cooperate less, entrench themselves a little more. It's not me. They have to take care of it.
Okay, so they're trying to identify where they fit in, and so there's natural conflict to that. But I'm guessing also too just the fact that they might be given additional responsibilities and they're trying to habitualize those. That there's obviously natural resistance there.
Well, there is. And the bottom line is the leader has to require that people talk and listen to one another. Because if everything, let's say it escalates to the team leader, the practice manager, whatever we're going to call it. And at the end of the day, the practice manager cannot get involved in every circumstance that's happening within the practice. The practice has to handle it themselves. There has to be a healthy exchange of feedback, going back to situationally based, flexible. People can share their thoughts and beliefs, right? And at the end of the day, there has to be a gaining of agreement. And even if the leader says, I need you guys to agree to disagree, shake on it and walk out of here, but make it true, sometimes that is the way to do it. If those conflicts are not resolved, those smaller ones, your team is going to stay storming for quite a while. And that can try your last nerve.
Yeah, that can probably kill your whole initiative sometimes,
Totally.
right? If it's,
Totally. And then we eventually move into norming. So after we storm and it's interdependent, and then it moves to resistance, now we're moving into people are actually on their own building consensus. That's the benefit of storming.
Yeah.
We'll learn the skill of, well, I guess I have to learn how to play in the sandbox. And so I'm going to have to learn how to budge. And what we're working on at that point is how do people accept and agree on the roles and responsibility? How do we work through what's called consensus decision-making? How do the procedures and the processes play out amongst all of us so that there's an equitable split of responsibilities and duties? And now we're moving into a leader being the person that delegates. Think of air traffic control, Mark.
Yeah.
The person who delegates and organizes and makes small shifts. But when we're norming, the team themselves starts getting involved.
Love that.
And then lastly, that leads to performing. And that's when literally the team just starts to get its own, what Cheryl used to call cadence. I call it mojo, That's when the team really, really goes from procedures and policies and roles into commitment to the cause versus compliance.
Oh, that's a huge shift, right? I mean, that's night and day.
It's everything, Mark, because when people are compliant, it's like, just tell me what to do.
Right. Yes.
It's just one, talk to the hand, whatever. When people are committed, they will start looking for what needs to be done. They will be able to talk down that upset patient. They will be even more tolerant and patient with their team. They will understand the dentists and the other providers are going crazy trying to service people. And we know that we're understaffed. with dental assistants and hygienes. It's a nationwide problem. And so when we start performing, the leader can't be complacent, but the leader has to step back, provide guidance, do much more one-on-one and individual coaching, and keep people engaged. And the very next time we add a provider, change staff, change hours, bring on someone even part-time or even a rotating hygienist or dental assistant, we're going to go back to forming, storming, and norming.
So this is the framework. This is the process that you adopt for any of these potential changes that you're considering.
Any one of them. And the leadership is going to change. The communications are going to change. And the strengths that your people show is also going to shift based on their mood, their emotions, how conflicted they are. And those are the things that are really going to make a difference.
Yeah.
And so how do you think the dental teams will be able to benefit from forming, storming, norming, and performing? Do you think that that's something that I've explained well enough for a dentist and other providers to understand and be able to go with coming out of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I love about it is that even just the overview, knowing what steps, when they happen, so you can recognize which stage that you're in, even just that alone is going to help you really gauge where you are in the process, and that's half the battle, I mean, understanding that, hey, we're in storming phase and it's tricky. There's going to be conflict. There's going to be resistance. There's going to be people that are emotionally charged up, more likely, or I guess expressing their emotions more than they were before. And this is what I need to do about that. I mean, and just recognizing that it's all part of the process. I think that is huge.
Exactly. And so a lot of times people seek out what I call kumbaya, and they want to just have things go, quote unquote, smoothly. It will eventually. A lot of times change, in my experience, has not been as successful with a marketing campaign simply because people didn't understand it. They didn't feel that they were a part of it. And all of a sudden, a high-performing team went to storming just like that. And I was called in to help a few times because people just couldn't figure out what just happened.
Yeah.
And what happened was people didn't feel that they were being respected as a high-performing team. And why didn't you share this with us? And why couldn't we have been a part of it? And one of the most high-performing teams just literally fell apart. And I remember this happened probably about 7 or 8 years ago. And it was really difficult for me because I knew how good they were.
Right.
And it very, very quickly unraveled, which brings me back to the point. People's strengths are going to change and evolve, and how they're responding to stuff really matters. Do you think it would be helpful for your audience to understand 5 potential styles of change so they know not to performance manage, but just kind of be aware of what they might be able to expect as people are forming, storming, norming, and performing? Do you think that would help?
Love that. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Now I'm going to take this information from materials that were created at Humana, where I used to be. And they came up with 5. You can actually, when I looked this up on the internet, there's so many different ways to sort this information, but I'm going to use what I'm comfortable with because it made a great deal of sense. So big shout out to Humana. There's 5 different styles that we can expect to see. And especially with your arena, Mark, it's so important for the dentists to understand what they're looking at as they're thinking about all of the things we've already talked about.
Right.
Number 1 style, you're going to have innovators. Oh my gosh, these people see opportunities versus risks. They are creative. They're idealistic. And so who on your team is always pumping out ideas? Who always has an idea to make it a little bit better, a little bit more this, a little bit more that? The people that keep spewing out the ideas Those potentially are your innovators. And that's very, very helpful during change. If you're lucky enough to have one person on your team that can just learn about it and jump on your bandwagon, like we've been talking about, it's a newsflash to them, but it's not to us. You are with a blessing. Now, you also have early adopters. Now, these people are optimistic. They're not idealistic. They are motivated. They also want to seek out things that are new. But I don't know about you, but I've never bought a first-year model car. I've always waited for year two.
Yes, that's how I am.
The early adopters, they may not be the innovator, but they're going to be standing right there in the wings, ready to jump in because they are motivated to adopt early once they just settle into what the big picture looks like. Okay. Then you have the pragmatic people. And being pragmatic is simply people want evidence and data. I'm kind of that way in a lot of things. I like analytics. There's a bottom line orientation. And this is the difference between pragmatic and being an innovator. The pragmatic people are looking at risk versus opportunity, where the innovators are looking at opportunities and not so much the risk. So already and I've got two more to share, the pragmatic people and the innovators might have conflict.
Yes.
Because they're looking at it from two completely different vantage points, right?
Right.
Okay. Then you have the very healthy skeptics, where they will question information. So that's different from the pragmatic person. That person says, give me some data, I'll look at it.
Yeah.
Right? The skeptic is going to question it. They're going to challenge. They need proof that the change is valid. And actually, I see that as one of your key roles in all of this. Can you provide the dental team with data? And can you show them where this has worked similarly in other practices? And here's what we saw. We saw trends. We saw this. Here's some comments that were out in, the Ethernet, as I call it. Anything that you can do with the leaders to give people the data and really help them understand it in an easy way, Mark, will turn those skeptics into pragmatic people and hopefully move them in their style. Last but not least, style number 5, you've got traditionalists. These are the people that just really like maintaining the status quo. They're resistant to change simply because it's always worked this way. This has been fine. I see no reason to change this. This is everything I've ever done at this practice. And I've been here for X number of years. It could be 6 months, 1 year, 25 years. What's interesting, though, about this traditionalist style, Mark, these are the people that are the stabilizing influence.
Interesting.
When you can turn around the traditionalist, these are the people that are going to be able to tell everyone else it's going to be all right. And it's a big turnaround. But I hope that your dental teams can see in people one of these 5 styles and understand that that is one of the 5 basic approaches that we taught at Humana, so that people understood this isn't a performance management issue. This isn't a quote unquote attitude adjustment learning moment. This is how people respond to change. We have to help them through it. We have to lead people through the situations that we manage.
And that's so helpful, because once you understand, you can identify and what they might be thinking, what they're going through, and you can address that accordingly. But when you're not even we have no idea, you're just flying blind, and that's a scary place to be in.
Well, and it is. And a lot of, as well as I do, change is not luck. Change is planned and strategized, and there's tactics put around it, and, achievable outcomes that are measurable. There's a lot that goes into it, and helping people understand all of that, we have to give people context. And I myself start feeling conflicted if I don't have context. When people say, oh, don't worry about it, Andrea, just trust me. I'm thinking to myself, I do trust you, and I still want what I asked for. I still need that information. That's how I process. That's how I prioritize and decide and make the choices and understand what the high value items are, is with data. Remember the old dimensions of success that we used to do?
Yes,
I've been doing that for a while. Yeah. So success is outlined as either a relationship, process, or results, right?
Results,
So I'm that process gal, understanding that without people, you get nothing. Yeah. But I'm that process gal, and you mess with my processes and you don't give me data. I'm not sure that I am really going to support the change either. I'll probably wind up in that pragmatic, skeptic, early adopter portion. I will hardly ever be the innovator because I'm a little too tactical to innovate. I think I just like knowing the directions people choose, and then I'll help you along. Yeah. And I do like status quo, but I'm also old enough and wise enough to understand that change is going to happen anyway. So let's just get on board and go for the ride. Right. And I'm not going to hold people back. But for me, learning these styles and training to them over the years in a variety of ways has been extremely helpful in understanding what leadership looks like when you can really see these things in your people and know that they're really doing their best. They're not being difficult deliberately. Right. They're just being who they are.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy this episode of the Dental Marketing Secrets Podcast? Head on over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. And for more proven marketing strategies to grow your practice, visit practicerocket.net.